Congratulations, Ryan. And now let's give a warm welcome to the TCL representative.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Relax News. Today, we're breaking down Team USA's matchup against New Zealand. The final score ended up exactly how most people predicted. Team USA dominated the game and walked away with a massive 55-point victory. On paper, that looks like a complete blowout, and in many ways, it absolutely was. But when you actually watch how the game unfolded, there were some interesting moments, some lineup experimentation, and a few clear takeaways about how this roster is functioning right now. Coming into this matchup, Team USA was playing on the second night of a back-to-back. Meanwhile, New Zealand had already dropped 3 straight games in the tournament. The talent difference between these two teams was huge. Realistically, most fans expected an enormous margin of victory. Some people thought it could reach 60 or even 70 points. Honestly, I was one of those people who thought this could easily turn into a 70-point blowout. So when the final margin settled at 55, it almost felt strange to say the performance wasn't perfect, even though that's still an incredibly lopsided win. What made the game feel unusual was how inconsistent the flow was. It almost looked like 2 different games depending on the quarter. At times, Team USA looked completely unstoppable, moving the ball smoothly and scoring at will. Then there were stretches where the offense looked a little chaotic and out of sync. The first quarter started somewhat slow. The second quarter looked much sharper and more controlled. Then the third quarter became messy again with some disorganized possessions. Finally, the fourth quarter was extremely strong. That kind of inconsistency suggested that the coaching staff was clearly experimenting with rotations. Different lineups were being tested, players were shifting roles, and it looked like the staff was trying to figure out which combinations might work best later in the tournament. One of the most interesting storylines in this game was how Caitlin Clark was used. For large portions of the game, she wasn't playing her natural position. Instead of running the offense at point guard, she spent time off the ball, essentially filling a small forward role while someone else handled playmaking duties. And honestly, it didn't look very comfortable. When Clark was positioned off the ball, her impact noticeably dropped. She struggled to find a rhythm and had difficulty getting consistent shot opportunities. Through the first 3 quarters, there were stretches where she just didn't look like the version of Clark fans are used to seeing. The reason felt pretty obvious. Her greatest strength is controlling the offense, reading defenses, and creating opportunities with the ball in her hands. Then the fourth quarter arrived, and everything shifted. Clark started handling the ball much more at point guard, and almost immediately the offense looked smoother. In roughly 6 minutes of action, she produced 5 points and 4 assists without committing a single turnover. That's extremely efficient production for such a short stretch of time. Even beyond the official assists, she created several hockey assists, making the pass that led directly to another assist. Those plays don't show up in the box score, but they're incredibly important for offensive rhythm. When Clark is running the offense, she's constantly generating open looks, finding cutters, hitting shooters, and pushing the pace. That brief stretch in the fourth quarter reminded everyone why she's such a special playmaker. Now, to be fair, her 3-point shooting wasn't great in this particular game. She finished 2 of 7 from beyond the arc, and several of those attempts were open shots she normally hits. That's definitely something she'll want to clean up moving forward. But inside the 3-point line, she was perfect. Clark went 4 for 4 on 2-point attempts, and during this recent stretch of games, she actually hasn't missed a shot inside the arc. That's a pretty remarkable statistic and shows just how efficient she's been when attacking closer to the basket. While Clark's biggest moments came later in the game, Angel Reese made a huge impact early. In fact, you could argue she was the best player for Team USA in the first half. Reese brought her usual intensity on the boards, strong defensive presence, and constant energy that helped establish the early tone. Another standout performer was Ryan Howard, who many people considered the player of the game. Howard looked confident from the start and consistently knocked down shots. When she gets into that rhythm offensively, she becomes extremely difficult for defenses to deal with. We've seen it throughout her career. When Howard catches fire, she can score in bunches and completely shift the momentum of a game. Several other players also contributed solid minutes. Kelsey Plum continued providing offensive scoring, something she's done consistently throughout the tournament. Jackie Young looks sharp during her time on the floor. Players like Monique Billings and Kiki Iriafen had moments where they were finishing plays created by teammates. Billings, in particular, has been an interesting fit within some of these lineups. She moves well without the ball, finishes efficiently near the rim, and benefits greatly from the playmaking of guards like Clark. Defensively, Team USA was strong for most of the night. They forced turnovers, pressured the ball effectively, and prevented New Zealand from ever finding a consistent offensive rhythm. There were a few short stretches where New Zealand managed to hit some shots, but they were never truly in a position to challenge the outcome of the game. At the end of the day, this matchup was less about the final score and more about lineup experimentation. When you face an opponent with a clear talent advantage, it becomes an opportunity to test strategies rather than simply trying to win by the largest margin possible. Still, the biggest takeaway from this game feels pretty clear. Caitlin Clark at point guard looks like one of the most dangerous players on the floor. Caitlin Clark playing off the ball simply doesn't have the same impact right now. Maybe over time she'll develop into a more versatile off-ball threat, but at the moment, her greatest strength is orchestrating the offense. When she's running the game, everything just flows better. Even with some inconsistency, Team USA still secured a comfortable victory. They weren't quite as dominant as they looked in the win against Italy, but they performed much better than they did earlier in the tournament against Puerto Rico. A 55-point win is still an impressive result, and the team continues building momentum. The big question going forward will be how the coaching staff structures their rotations, especially when it comes to putting their best playmakers in positions where they can maximize their impact. Because if the fourth quarter of this game showed anything, it's that when Clark is directing the offense, Team USA becomes a very different team. Now let's take a look at the numbers for Team USA so far in the tournament. When you start digging through the statistics, one thing becomes very clear. In several major categories, one name keeps appearing again and again: Caitlin Clark. If you look at the primary statistical categories, points, assists, rebounds, efficiency, steals, and blocks, Clark is currently leading the team in three of the biggest ones. She leads Team USA in efficiency, points per game, and assists per game. Before going further, it's worth quickly explaining the efficiency stat because it shows up constantly in international basketball. It's called FIBA efficiency, and you'll see it listed in almost every international box score. But interestingly, many people quote it without actually understanding how it works. The formula is fairly simple. It adds together positive contributions like points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, then subtracts negatives such as missed shots and turnovers. It's not an advanced metric like some modern analytics, but it does provide a quick snapshot of overall productivity. So when Clark leads Team USA in efficiency, it does highlight how much she's contributing across multiple areas. Her traditional numbers are even more revealing. Clark is currently averaging 12.8 points per game, which leads the team and puts her a few points ahead of Ryan Howard in second place. She's also leading the team in assists per game, showing once again why she's considered one of the most dynamic playmakers in basketball today. Chelsea Gray sits just behind her in assists, about an assist and a half per game lower. In the rebounding category, Angel Reese leads the team, which shouldn't surprise anyone who has followed her career. She's built a reputation as one of the most relentless rebounders in the game, consistently dominating the glass. For blocks, Monique Billings is currently leading Team USA with 2 per game. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers leads the team in steals with about 2.3 per game, showing how effective she's been defensively. When you break it down, there are 6 major statistical categories that fans usually look at, and Clark is currently leading 3 of them while other teammates fill the remaining spots. So naturally, the debate begins. Who has actually been the best player for Team USA so far? If you ask most people watching closely, 3 names stand out above the rest: Caitlin Clark, Ryan Howard, and Paige Bueckers. Those 3 players have arguably made the biggest overall impact during the tournament. There are other players contributing as well. Jackie Young has been productive when you look at her numbers on a per-minute basis, but sometimes it's difficult to judge full effort levels in games where the outcome is already comfortable. Another fascinating stat is true shooting percentage, which measures overall scoring efficiency. Clark is currently leading the team there as well, sitting around an incredible 80% true shooting. A big reason for that number is how effective she's been inside the arc. Clark is actually shooting 100% on two-point attempts so far in the tournament, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. Every shot she's taken inside the three-point line has gone in. From three-point range, she's also been strong, hitting around 45%, which is excellent considering the volume of shots she takes. Rebounding isn't really part of her role, so it's not surprising that she sits near the bottom of the roster in that category. She's still ahead of a couple teammates, though, including Kalea Copper. There are also a few statistics that critics sometimes bring up, such as turnovers. Clark currently leads the team in turnovers per game, but context is important here. She still maintains an assist-to-turnover ratio well above 2-to-1, which is considered a strong mark for primary playmakers. And honestly, assist-to-turnover ratios can sometimes be misleading. A player might make the perfect pass, but if the teammate misses the shot, it doesn't count as an assist. That's why evaluating playmakers requires looking beyond just that single number. Minutes played is another interesting detail. Clark is actually leading Team USA in minutes per game, though the margin is extremely small. She's essentially tied with Paige Bueckers and Kelsey Plum, with only a few seconds separating them. Another small observation is that Bueckers is currently taking slightly more shots per game than Clark, despite playing slightly fewer minutes. When you step back and look at the entire picture, the scoring, the assists, the efficiency numbers, it's clear that Clark has been one of the central engines behind Team USA's success so far. Whether you love diving into the statistics or think some of them are overrated, the numbers still paint an interesting story about how this team is operating and which players are driving the results. So now I want to hear your thoughts. What was your first impression of the game? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.